My mother does not want you inside. My husband said it so softly that nobody around us noticed. Then he stared directly into my face and delivered the sentence that would shatter our 23-year marriage. You are a humiliation. For a moment I genuinely believed I had misheard him. The late afternoon sunlight bounced off the limestone facade of the Houston Polo Club where my sister-in-law Brooke's wedding was minutes from starting. Guests draped in couture gowns and pressed tuxedos streamed past us giggling while a jazz ensemble played somewhere beyond the foyer. I was not standing outside the reception hall because I had arrived late. I was standing there because the door staff refused me entry. Your name does not appear on the approved list, ma'am. The young attendant had been apologetic. There has to be an error. I smiled politely. I am sure there is. I had expected Marcus to resolve the matter with a single sentence. Instead he became the problem. My mother does not want you inside. He repeated, straightening the cufflinks I had gifted him for our 20th anniversary. Why not? His jaw stiffened. She feels you will make people awkward. I have scarcely spoken to anyone in months. That is beside the point. Then what is the point? He exhaled as though I were the unreasonable one. Serena, you are a humiliation. The words struck harder than any shout ever could. Not because they were loud, because they were measured, intentional, absolute. I gazed at the man I had loved since I was 22 years old. The man whose very first business pitch I had rewritten through the night because he was too anxious to deliver it. The man whose father I had quietly helped restructure finances for after the family nearly lost everything in the downturn. The man whose entire clan believed he was their savior. He could not even hold my gaze anymore. Behind him I spotted my mother-in-law Judith welcoming guests beneath a towering canopy of ivory peonies. She appeared radiant, satisfied, joyful. Why would she not? Merely 4 days earlier I had acquired her dream residence, a $9.2 million beachfront estate in Sarasota, Florida. She assumed Marcus had funded it. Everyone did. Nobody knew the money had originated from me. I never set the record straight. That had always been my error. I see, I finally said. Marcus looked relieved. I knew you would understand. No, I understood something altogether different. I retrieved my phone. He watched me closely. What are you doing? Responding. I opened our text thread and typed a single word. Understood. I tapped send. Then I looked up and smiled. I hope Brooke has a wonderful ceremony. Without waiting for another syllable, I pivoted and walked toward the parking area. I did not cry. Not yet. The attendant brought my white Range Rover around within minutes. As I settled behind the wheel, I finally permitted myself one extended breath. 23 years finished. Not because of another woman, not because of finances, not because we had ceased loving one another, because at some point along the journey, my husband had stopped respecting me. Those are two fundamentally different things. Love endures disagreements. Respect endures silence. Once respect perishes, everything else eventually crumbles. I turned the ignition but did not pull away. Instead I sat there observing guests file in. Families arranging themselves for photographs, grandparents embracing grandchildren, little girls clutching petal baskets. It resembled every picture-perfect American wedding I had ever witnessed. Except today I was not considered family. At least that was what Judith wanted the world to think. The irony nearly drew a laugh from me. Because if anyone present truly grasped how much of that wedding had been underwritten by me, the entire evening would grind to a halt. The floral arrangements, the live band, the imported Prosecco, even Brooke's honeymoon villa on the Amalfi Coast. Every single bill had quietly passed across my desk months earlier. Judith had repeatedly praised Marcus for his generosity. He absorbed every compliment. He never corrected her. Initially, I assumed he was simply sidestepping uncomfortable conversations. Over time, avoidance hardened into habit. Habit hardened into expectation. Expectation hardened into entitlement, and entitlement inevitably curdles into cruelty. My phone buzzed. It was my executive assistant, Paula. Mrs. Ashford. Hello, Paula. You sound different. I probably do. Is everything all right? I glanced back toward the reception hall. No. She stayed quiet. One reason Paula had worked beside me for 14 years was because she recognized when stillness mattered more than questions. Finally, she asked softly, "What do you need?" I smiled. Exactly the right question. Not, "What happened?" Not, Are you all right? Simply, what do you need? I need the number for Nathan. He did not hesitate. I will text it now. Within seconds my phone vibrated again. Nathan Cross, managing partner, Cross and Whitfield Estate Attorneys. The man who had spent nearly 2 decades helping architect my businesses, trusts, charitable organizations and asset protection structures. The man who understood one crucial reality. Virtually everything the Ashford family enjoyed legally rested on me. Not Marcus, not Judith. Me. I stared at the number for close to a minute. Then I locked my phone again. No. Not yet. Rage produces costly choices. I had constructed my career by refusing to act while emotional. If I was going to alter the trajectory of my life, I would do it steadily, deliberately, professionally. Precisely the way I had assembled my wealth. I drove without direction through Houston. Past River Oaks. Past the commercial tower where my investment firm occupied the top 2 floors. Past restaurants where Marcus and I once toasted anniversaries. Every block carried memories. Every memory abruptly felt borrowed. At a stoplight, I recalled something my grandmother used to say. People seldom reveal who they truly are during hardship. They reveal it during prosperity. Life had grown too comfortable for Marcus. He had forgotten who had made that comfort feasible. Perhaps I had helped him forget. The light changed. I continued driving. 45 minutes had elapsed since I departed the Polo Club. Then 50. Then 56. I eventually turned into a vacant lookout beside Buffalo Bayou. The water caught the amber glow of dusk. Gorgeous. Serene. Nothing like the tempest quietly gathering inside me. My phone displayed exactly 1 hour since I had texted Marcus, understood. I unlocked the screen, scrolled to Nathan Cross, pressed call. He picked up before the second ring. Serena, it is me. I assumed you would be at the ceremony. I was. Pause. That does not sound promising. It is not. His voice shifted to instantly professional. What would you like me to do? I gazed across the bayou. For the first time all afternoon I smiled. Nathan, I believe it is time we examine every financial arrangement tied to the Ashford family. There was total silence. Then he quietly responded, I will meet you at the office within 30 minutes. I disconnected the call. The sun slipped beneath the skyline. Certain endings arrive with explosions. Mine arrived with one composed sentence and one phone call. The Ashford family had no notion that while they were lifting champagne flutes inside the reception hall, the bedrock beneath everything they assumed they possessed had just begun to fracture. Nathan was already present when I arrived. It was nearly 8 in the evening, yet every light on the 24th floor of my headquarters remained illuminated. My executive team had no understanding of why I had summoned my attorney after business hours. They only knew that when I requested privacy, I invariably had a compelling reason. Nathan stood as I entered the conference room. He had been my attorney for almost 18 years. More critically, he had become one of the few individuals who knew the unvarnished truth about my marriage. He examined my expression for several seconds before speaking. What happened? My husband labeled me a humiliation. Nathan slowly removed his glasses. I am sorry. So am I. Was that everything? I laughed softly. Oh. I placed my phone on the conference table and slid it toward him. He read Marcus's final text. My mother does not want you inside. You are a humiliation. Nathan looked back at me. After everything you have done for them? I know. He stayed silent. There was not much left to express. Sometimes facts speak with more force than outrage. 23 years earlier, I had met Marcus Ashford at a commercial development summit in San Antonio. He was charismatic, self-assured, witty. He came from what everyone considered one of Houston's most established old money dynasties. I, on the other hand, was the daughter of 2 warehouse workers who had passed away within months of each other when I was 15. After drifting between relatives and group homes, I financed my own education through scholarships, late-night jobs and relentless determination. By 29, I had built a modest but expanding investment firm specializing in undervalued commercial real estate. I was not glamorous. I simply outworked nearly everyone around me. Marcus admired that, or at least I convinced myself he did. We married 2 years later. During our honeymoon, I uncovered my first secret about the Ashford family. They were not actually wealthy. They only projected wealth. Their club memberships, luxury automobiles, holiday properties, private academies. Everything hinged on rolling old debt into new debt. They had mastered the illusion of prosperity. Behind closed doors, the figures were alarming. One evening, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his head buried in his hands. My father leveraged everything. How dire is it? Worse than anyone realizes. Does your mother know? She refuses to accept it. He looked utterly crushed. I have no idea how to save them. I reached across the table and held his hand. We will work it out. Back then, I still believed we signified precisely that. Together. Within half a year, I quietly organized financing through one of my investment partnerships. The Ashford family's manufacturing operations survived. Nobody beyond the boardroom ever discovered why. Marcus thanked me over dinner. You rescued my family. We rescued them. He smiled. I could not have managed it without you. I believed him. At the time, he believed it as well. The years advanced. My firm expanded into Texas, Georgia, Florida, and Nevada, then New York, then North Carolina. Every acquisition reinforced our portfolio. Every profitable transaction generated more revenue than the previous one. Eventually, money ceased being something I pursued. It became something I stewarded. That was around the period Judith's expectations began to evolve. Initially, she only requested minor favors. Serena, would you mind assisting Brooke with her student debt? Certainly. Marcus mentioned you have a talent for investments. Could you evaluate this property? Of course. A friend of mine is launching a boutique. Happy to help. Every request sounded temporary, sensible, family-supporting family. Then the requests escalated. Private academy fees, vacation properties, medical procedures, luxury cruises, startup capital, designer home renovations. Every holiday season brought another expensive surprise someone expected Marcus to furnish. Every holiday season I quietly settled the invoice. One afternoon, Judith embraced Marcus after he presented her with the keys to a new BMW. My son always provides for his mother. I stood barely a meter away. She never glanced in my direction. Marcus smiled uncomfortably. He uttered nothing. Driving home, I asked him gently, "Why did you not tell her?" He kept his eyes fixed on the road. "It brings her happiness." "It is not the truth." "I realize that." "Then why?" He sighed. "You know how Mom operates." I did. He cherished appearances, standing, acknowledgement, being admired. Correcting her publicly would have mortified her, so I surrendered again and again and again. In retrospect, every capitulation taught her another perilous lesson. She discovered she could erase me and I would permit it. Nathan opened one of the dossiers he had brought. "You have personally bankrolled 36 major expenditures for the Ashford family." I lost count. I did not. He slid several pages toward me. There they were. Property acquisitions, trust contributions, private loans, business guarantees, medical costs, tuition disbursements, charitable donations made under Judith's name. Nearly every milestone the Ashford family had celebrated over the previous 2 decades shared one commonality. My signature. Not Marcus's. My. Nathan studied me carefully. "Do you recall what I asked you when we structured these arrangements?" I nodded. "You asked whether I was shielding myself. And what was your answer?" I said I trusted my husband. And I cautioned you that trust and documentation should never substitute for one another. He was not reproaching me. He was reminding me. Everything had been meticulously recorded. Every transfer, every guarantee, every legal commitment. The Ashford family simply never bothered examining the paperwork. They presumed Marcus handled everything. Ironically, Marcus presumed I always would. I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Houston skyline. The city lights flickered beneath the summer sky. Magnificent. Bustling. Oblivious that my entire existence had transformed in a single afternoon. "I keep circling one question," I admitted. Nathan waited. "When did he stop seeing me?" He considered that for a long while. "I do not think he stopped seeing you." I turned toward him. "I think he stopped registering the cost of everything you quietly shouldered." That sentence embedded itself in me. People often treasure miracles until miracles become routine. Then they rebrand them as obligations. My phone vibrated. "Marcus. Incoming call." I stared at the screen. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I allowed it to roll to voicemail. Seconds later, another call, then another, then Brooke, then Judith. I answered none of them. Finally, a text materialized from Marcus. Where are you? Mom says the Sarasota closing has been held up. The title company will not release the property. They claim there is a complication with the funding. Can you phone me? I read it twice. Fascinating. The formal review had not even commenced. Nathan noticed my expression. What is it? I handed him my phone. He smiled for the first time that evening. They are already sensing the initial tremor. I looked down at the mounting list of missed calls. For 23 years, whenever the Ashford family required something, they rang me. Not because they cherished me, because I remedied problems. Tonight would be different. Tonight, for the very first time, their problems would have to wait. I slept for precisely 3 hours. Not because I was worried, because my mind had already reached its conclusion. When you have devoted your entire adult life to executing multimillion-dollar business judgments, you absorb something vital. Emotion belongs at home. Facts belong at the conference table. At 6:30 the following morning, I walked into my office carrying a cup of black coffee. Houston was barely stirring. My executive assistant Paula looked up from her desk. Your schedule is packed today. I am aware. She hesitated. And your husband has called 19 times. I suspected as much. He also appeared at the lobby around 6 this morning. I paused. He came here. He wanted to see you. What did you tell him? Exactly what you once instructed me to say. She smiled politely. Mrs. Ashford is unavailable without an appointment. I could not help but smile. Thank you. I assumed you had your reasons. I do. At 8 o'clock sharp Nathan entered the boardroom carrying 4 substantial binders. Behind him came 2 senior attorneys, then my chief financial officer Andrew, lastly my trust administrator Catherine. Every individual seated around that table had executed confidentiality agreements years prior. They understood the reality of my financial architecture. None of them had ever encountered Marcus socially. That had been deliberate. I wanted my enterprise and my marriage to occupy separate universes. Ironically, that partition was about to rescue me. Nathan opened the meeting. Serena has requested a comprehensive legal audit of every active financial arrangement benefiting the Ashford family. Nobody appeared startled. Professional people do not react with emotion. They react with inquiries. Andrew adjusted his glasses. Are we contemplating suspension or termination? Review first, I responded, then action where warranted. Catherine opened a spreadsheet. 35 active obligations exist. Take me through each one. She nodded. The Sarasota property scheduled to close tomorrow. 9.2 million. Correct. The funding currently resides inside a revocable family trust pending final authorization. Nathan looked toward me. That authorization requires your signature. I have not signed. No. Andrew continued. Additionally, there are 3 personal guarantees attached to Marcus's investment firm. Any legal duty compelling me to continue? He scanned several pages. None. What occurs if they are revoked? The lenders will demand replacement collateral within 30 days. And if none materializes? The loans become immediately callable. I reclined quietly. Interesting. I had not realized Marcus had become that financially vulnerable. Not because I had been indifferent, because I had never envisioned needing to know. Nathan folded his hands. Serena. Yes. I must pose something directly. I nodded. Are you attempting to punish your husband? The room went still. Everyone waited. I deliberated before responding. Oh. Then what are you attempting to achieve? Judith. Nobody spoke. Finally I continued. For 23 years I have permitted everyone, Marcus included, to embrace a version of reality that simply does not correspond to fact. Andrew nodded slowly. I understand. I will not destroy anyone. I know. But I will also not continue funding people who publicly degrade me. Nathan smiled faintly. That is a markedly different objective. It is. At precisely 9:37 in the morning, Nathan drafted the first correspondence. It was not theatrical. No lawsuits, no threats, merely a formal notice. Pending review, funding for the Sarasota property is temporarily suspended until further written authorization by the grantor. The grantor. Me. A second letter followed. The title company. A third, the escrow officer. A fourth, the estate planning institution. Everything transpired in accordance with contracts everyone had executed years earlier. Nothing unlawful, nothing emotional, merely paperwork. Remarkable how paperwork reshapes lives. Just then Nathan's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. It is Judith. Neither of us spoke. He looked toward me. Should I answer? I nodded. Put her on speaker. He accepted the call. Nathan Cross speaking. Her voice erupted through the room. Where's Serena? I am here. There was a brief silence. Then she addressed me directly. What are you doing? Reviewing my finances. You have disgraced this family. I nearly smiled at the irony. Truly? You halted the closing. Yes. My furnishings are already there. I know. The movers are standing by. I know. My neighbors are expecting us. I understand. You need to rectify this at once. Oh. Silence. The variety that descends when someone encounters the word no for the first time. Finally she asked. What do you mean no? I mean the acquisition has been suspended. You pledged me that house. I never pledged you anything. Marcus did. I glanced toward my husband. He bowed his head. You funded it. I regarded it as a gift. And you made it abundantly clear yesterday that I am a humiliation. Her voice sharpened. This has nothing to do with yesterday. It has everything to do with yesterday. You cannot penalize us over wounded pride. I agree. She sounded relieved. So you will reinstate the funding? Oh. Another extended silence. I am safeguarding my dignity. Without waiting for her reply, I nodded to Nathan. He terminated the call. Marcus buried his face in his hands. I cannot believe this. Which part? My mother. Or yourself? He met my eyes. Both. For nearly a minute, neither of us uttered a sound. Then he asked something I had not foreseen. Were you ever going to reveal the truth to me? He nodded. I intended to. When? The day you took pride in me rather than in what I could silently provide. His shoulders sagged. I failed you. You did. I kept convincing myself I was shielding everyone. No. You were shielding appearances. That evening the family group chat detonated. Brooke demanded explanations. Her husband wanted to confirm whether the Sarasota house was genuinely secured. Judith maintained there had been a banking error. Then my father-in-law Harold, who had always spoken the least, finally typed one sentence. Serena, is any of this accurate? I stared at the message. Harold had never mistreated me. Quiet, reserved, occasionally emotionally remote but never vicious. I replied with a single photograph. One page from the original trust agreement. It displayed my name, the funding source, the purchase figure. Nothing more. 5 minutes later Harold called. I answered. His voice sounded more aged than I recalled. Serena. Yes. I spent 19 years believing my son had rescued this family. I know. I feel ashamed. You do not owe an apology for believing what you were told. No. He sighed heavily. I owe an apology because I never troubled myself to ask. That sentence struck me harder than I anticipated. Not because it erased the past, because it acknowledged it. For the first time, someone inside that family was not mounting a defense. They were shouldering accountability. The following morning, several Houston business outlets began reporting that the purchase of a $9.2 million Sarasota beachfront estate had been unexpectedly postponed. No names were published, only conjecture. Inside my office, however, everyone already understood the reality. Not because I had broadcast it, because truth has a method of surfacing once people abandon pretense. Late that afternoon, Nathan returned carrying one final folder. Everything has now been formally frozen. The discretionary trusts, the guarantees, the luxury property funding, the annual family distributions. He placed the folder before me. Nothing has been seized from them. He paused. They simply no longer have access to what was never genuinely theirs. I signed the final acknowledgement, closed the folder, and for the first time in 23 years, I experienced something I had not expected. Not triumph, not vengeance. Relief. Because shouldering people who do not value you is exhausting. And the instant you finally release the burden, you comprehend how crushing it truly was. The headlines vanished within 2 days. The postponed mansion closing never escalated into a public scandal. No television crews materialized outside my office. No journalist staked out my residence. Genuine wealth seldom generates loud spectacle. It generates quiet repercussions. Those repercussions began materializing one by one. A week after the wedding, Marcus telephoned again. This time I answered immediately. Oh, can we meet? His voice carried a different quality. Gone was the assurance that had once made every exchange feel like a negotiation. Now he simply sounded depleted. I will meet you. Tomorrow morning. Or our usual coffee spot. I considered it. The small cafe in River Oaks had been woven into our marriage since the start. We had celebrated my first commercial property acquisition there. We had toasted when his father emerged from surgery. We had mapped vacations over cinnamon pastries and dark roast. It felt oddly fitting. 9 o'clock. I will be there. The next morning Marcus was already waiting when I arrived. He stood as I entered. For a second instinct nearly drove me to embrace him. 23 years of habits do not dissolve overnight. Instead I shook his hand. His eyes momentarily brimmed with sadness. I deserved that. Yes. We ordered coffee. Neither of us touched it. Finally he spoke. I have spent the past week studying everything. What do you mean everything? The financial records, the trust agreements, the partnership documents, the guarantees. He looked down. I was completely oblivious. I believe you. Oh. He shook his head. I was utterly oblivious to the magnitude of what you have done. I offered no reply. There was nothing remaining to add. He continued. My father devoted 2 days to combing through old files and he wept. That caught me off guard. Harold Ashford was not a sentimental man. I have witnessed him cry twice in my entire life. Marcus said softly. The first time was when his brother passed and the second when he understood he had spent 19 years expressing gratitude to the wrong person. Marcus reached into his briefcase. I brought something. He slid a leather portfolio across the table. Inside was every credit card linked to family trusts, every access credential, every account authorization, every signature stamp. I do not want any of it. You are not obligated to return it. I'm not returning it. He looked squarely at me. I am acknowledging it was never mine. For a long moment I simply studied him. This was not the Marcus I had encountered outside Brooke's wedding. This was the young man I had married. Candid, humbled, frightened. Thank you, I said. He nodded. I should have spoken those words years ago. 2 days later Harold asked if he could visit my office. When he arrived he appeared markedly older than I recalled. He carried a small wooden box. I discovered these while clearing my study. Inside were dozens of handwritten thank you notes. Every birthday card I had ever mailed him. Holiday letters, family photographs. I never recognized something before. What? He smiled sadly. In every photograph. He handed me one from Brooke's college graduation. I stood in the back row carrying everyone's jackets, ensuring everyone had water, checking reservations on my phone, attending to everyone else, never once positioned in the center. You were perpetually taking care of us. I was content to. Oh. He shook his head gently. You persuaded yourself you had to earn your place. His words touched a nerve I had not anticipated. Perhaps he was correct. Growing up without parents had imparted one hazardous lesson. If I wished to be loved, I had to be indispensable. Somewhere along the way, indispensability had silently supplanted self-worth. 3 weeks later, I formally filed for divorce. The courthouse felt unexpectedly mundane. No dramatic confrontation, no raised voices, no accusations, just signatures, paperwork, legal terminology. The judge examined our agreement. Mrs. Ashford, are these terms satisfactory to you? They are. Mr. Ashford? Yes, Your Honor. The divorce itself consumed fewer than 20 minutes. Walking back to the parking garage, Marcus stopped me. I realize this will not alter anything. It will not. I still need to express it. I waited. I am sorry. For what? He looked toward the courthouse behind us. For mistaking your generosity for duty, for permitting my mother to dictate our marriage, for assuming respect could be postponed indefinitely. His voice fractured. I lost the finest thing that ever entered my life. I felt tears gathering. Not because I yearned for him back, because I recognized he finally comprehended. Sometimes comprehension arrives too late. Life pressed on. Without my financial support, the Ashford family confronted difficult realities. Nothing catastrophic unfolded. Nobody became destitute. Nobody lost medical coverage. Nobody declared bankruptcy. But the lifestyle transformed. The Sarasota mansion was never acquired. The Telluride vacation property was sold. Premium memberships were discontinued. The chauffeur was released. Private aviation became commercial tickets. Designer shopping expeditions became carefully planned budgets. For the first time in decades, the family began existing on what they actually earned. Ironically, they found it was sufficient. Perhaps not sufficient for appearances, but sufficient for living. Then arrived the most unexpected development of all. Roughly 4 months after the divorce, I received a handwritten letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. The penmanship belonged to Judith. I nearly discarded it. Instead, I opened it. It began simply. Serena, for the majority of my life I confused being admired with being respected. I continued reading. She conceded she had relished telling acquaintances that her son had achieved such prominence. She conceded she enjoyed the attention, the flattery, the envy. She conceded something further. I persuaded myself that if people discovered the truth, they would regard my family with less esteem. Then came the sentence that momentarily arrested my breathing. The reality is, I thought less of you because acknowledging what you had accomplished made me feel ashamed of what I had not. I read it again and again. Finally, the closing paragraph. I am not requesting another dollar. I am asking whether someday you might permit me to apologize face to face. I folded the letter carefully, placed it inside my desk drawer. Certain apologies materialize because people require something. Others materialize because people have genuinely become someone new. I was uncertain which category this fell into, but for the first time I was open to discovering the answer. Nearly a year elapsed before I encountered Judith again. By then, my life bore no resemblance to what it had been before Brooke's wedding. The divorce had long been settled. I had relocated to a smaller home overlooking Buffalo Bayou. Friends had questioned why I did not retain the sprawling estate Marcus and I once inhabited. My response was always identical. I do not require a larger house. What I required was a simpler life. For the first time in decades, my calendar was not crammed with obligations that belonged to other people. No emergency wire transfers, no family emergencies, no 11th-hour rescues, no pretending someone else merited the credit. Instead, I rediscovered mornings. Coffee on the terrace, long walks along the bayou, dinner with friends who knew me simply as Serena, not as someone's wife or someone's financial safety net. Tranquility proved far more precious than extravagance. My firm continued expanding. Paradoxically, stepping away from the emotional burden I had shouldered for 23 years rendered me a more effective leader. I established a scholarship program for young adults aging out of foster care. Whenever people asked why that cause held such personal significance, I smiled. Because someone believed in me before I learned how to believe in myself. The inaugural cohort included 11 students. The following year, 26. By the third year, our foundation had broadened into 4 states. Watching those young people graduate, launch careers, and construct stable lives delivered a species of fulfillment no corporate acquisition ever had. Achievement felt different when it was not quantified by balance sheets. It felt human. One afternoon, my assistant walked into my office. "A gentleman in the lobby is asking to see you." "Who is it?" "Marcus." I looked toward the window. "Send him in." He entered carrying nothing except a plain envelope. No luxury timepiece, no designer suit, no facade of someone striving to impress. He appeared at ease, healthier, older, wiser. "Oh, Serena." "Oh." We sat across from each other. Neither of us hurried to fill the silence. Finally he smiled. "I secured a position." I heard. He had accepted a role as Chief Operations Officer for a regional logistics company. A standard executive salary, demanding hours, genuine accountability, no trust funds, no shortcuts. "I am proud of you." He laughed softly. "That means more than you realize." He surveyed my office. "I nearly did not come." "Why did you?" "I owed you something." "You have already apologized." "I did not come to apologize." He slid the envelope across the table. Inside was a check. It was not substantial. Not measured against the sums I had expended over the years. Attached was a handwritten note. "First installment." I looked up. "Serena, I realize I will never repay everything. I was not expecting you to. I am not doing it because I owe the amount." He smiled. "I am doing it because I owe the effort." That sentence nearly drew tears. For the first time since I had known him, he fully grasped the distinction between receiving and earning. "I will accept it." "You will?" "Yes." "Why?" Because declining it would deprive you of the opportunity to become the man you are striving to be. He nodded quietly. I hoped you would say that. Before departing, he paused at the doorway. I loved you, Serena. I know. I believe I spent too many years loving what you gave instead of appreciating who you were. I smiled gently. I know that as well. He walked away. I watched him disappear down the corridor. Strangely, I did not feel sorrow. I felt gratitude. Certain relationships are not destined to endure forever. Some are destined to teach us precisely what we need before they conclude. 3 months later, Judith requested a meeting. We selected a quiet cafe far removed from the polo club where everything had unraveled. When she entered, I scarcely recognized her. She still dressed elegantly, but something fundamental had shifted. The confidence that once commanded attention had given way to quiet humility. She lowered herself into the chair. Thank you for coming. I was not certain I would. I would not have faulted you. She folded her hands. For nearly a full minute she searched for the proper words. Finally they arrived. I have replayed that day outside Brooke's wedding hundreds of times. I remained silent. I wanted everyone to admire my family. She smiled sadly. And in chasing admiration, I forfeited the respect of the one person who most deserved mine. She reached into her handbag and placed something on the table. The house key I had given her after she downsized to a far more modest place several months earlier. I no longer want gifts. I looked at the key. You are not required to return it. I know. She nudged it closer anyway. I need to. Tears filled her eyes. I treated generosity as an entitlement. I gauged your worth by what people thought of you. And I lost sight of the simplest truth. She looked directly at me. The strongest people are usually the quietest ones. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then I reached across the table and gently covered her hand with mine. I forgive you. She closed her eyes. Not dramatically, merely with relief. I am not asking to become family again. I know. I only hoped I would not spend the rest of my life wondering if you would despise me forever. I do not. Hatred is heavy. I have carried enough weight already. She laughed through her tears. So have I. We departed the cafe separately. Not as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Not as adversaries. Simply as two women who had finally learned that pride exacts a far steeper price than honesty ever will. People frequently ask me whether I regret funding that mansion. The answer surprises them. Well, because the money did not expose who I was. Losing the mansion exposed who everyone else was, including me. I learned that generosity without boundaries inevitably becomes a license for disrespect. I learned that silence can preserve peace for a season, but it often sacrifices truth. Most importantly, I learned that forgiveness is not pretending the past never occurred. Forgiveness is refusing to let the past keep governing your future. If there is one thing I hope you carry away from my story, it is this. Never mistake love for self-erasure. The people who genuinely love you will not ask you to vanish so they can glow. They will ensure the world knows exactly who stood beside them. And if someone only prizes you for what you supply, they are not guarding your heart. They are depleting it. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story brought someone to mind, or if you have ever had to choose between preserving the calm and preserving your self-respect, I would love to hear your reflections in the comments. And if stories like this encourage you to trust that kindness and dignity are never liabilities, I hope you will subscribe and join me for the next one. Until then, guard your heart. It is worth immeasurably more than any mansion.